this Excel guide video, you will learn about the top 10 Excel functions you must know if you are new to Excel or if you want to refresh your Excel knowledge. Let's get started. To give you an idea of what you can do with these Excel functions, I decided to take some random sales data that we can work with. In this dataset, each salesperson has its own row. Let's have a quick look at the different columns. In the first column, you can see the salesperson's names, which are all unique. Then in the second column, you can see the states that these salespersons are working in, US states obviously. And then in the third column, you can see the exact city that they are working in. And in the next four columns, you can see the quarterly revenues that these salespersons generated in 2018. So you have one column for each quarter. Let's start by doing some row-wise calculations. In this dataset, we have the sales revenue per person on a quarterly basis. Let's assume we want to calculate what is the total revenue per person. Now, one way we could do this is by typing in equals, which is to start the formula, and then selecting this cell plus this cell plus this cell plus this cell. And this gives us the total revenue for Jenny in this case, but as you might have noticed, this is definitely not a very efficient way to do this task, as we had to click on every single value that we wanted to add to the sum. What you should do instead is use the sum function. You can use the sum function by typing in equals and then sum plus an opening bracket, and there it already is displayed. Now this sum function takes multiple arguments which are separated by a semicolon. So you can put in the same exact values like before and it will produce the same exact result, as you can see. However, the problem is doing it this way actually didn't save us any time because we had to put in every single value just like before. The solution to that problem is that instead of putting in every single value, you can just select a whole range, put it into the sum formula, and it will produce the exact same result like before. What you can see here is this range goes from D4 to G4. And if you want to have another range in this sum, you can just separate both ranges by a semicolon. But in that case, we only want to have this one range. We press enter and we get the same result as before. If you want to apply this function to all the other rows below in the exact same way, you can simply double-click on the bottom right corner of the cell. This will automatically calculate the same function for the other rows with relatively adjusted cell references. You can see this by clicking into the cell down here. As you can see, the range reference in the sum function has been updated correctly to the respective row. Another measure that we might be interested in is what is the average sales revenue per person. So to find that out, we can use the average function, which gives us the average value for all the quarters. And just like before, we can put in just a range of cell values instead of putting in single values. So let's do this. Close the bracket, press enter, and there we go. There we have the average value for Jenny. And by double clicking right there, we can use the autocomplete function just like we did before. The next function I'm going to show you is the if function. The if function is really useful because with it you can determine what value you want to have displayed in the cell depending on whether a certain condition is true or not. So for our dataset, let's assume we have a sales revenue target of $20,000 in total. And now we want to find out who of our salespersons actually fulfilled that target and who didn't. So let's type in that if function into this cell. As you can see, this if function takes three arguments. The first one is called logical test, and this is the condition that we want to check. And in our case, we want to know if this cell value is greater equals 20,000 because the cell value is the total revenue. And if that's the case, so if this condition is true, we want this cell to display yes, good job. And if that's not the case, and the condition is not true, we want it to have the cell displayed no, work harder. And now the output, whether it shows yes, good job or no, work harder, is now depending on this condition right here in the front place. And yeah, let's see. Okay, it shows yes, good job, which is correct because Jenny obviously has a total revenue that is bigger than 20,000. But if we draw this down with their autocomplete function, we see there are some people that didn't work hard enough, obviously, because their total revenue values are below 20,000. And now we can see this directly based on this function. Let's move on to the next function. Basically, we're talking about two functions, but they should be mentioned together as they're basically doing the same, but just in opposite directions. So we are talking about the minimum and the maximum function. So what these functions do is they give you the lowest, respectively the highest value in a data set. So let's put that range of data for the first row into the min function. And as you can see, the output is 439, which obviously is the lowest value in this row. And if you do the same for the max function, we see we get the highest value immediately displayed, which is 9,803. If we look at these both values together, we get an idea of the range of values in a dataset that we put into this function. So regarding our dataset right here, it gives us an idea about how consistent our salespersons are in their performance. If they have a huge range of values, they're not really consistent. And if they have a really close range of values, they are more consistent than the other person. So if we draw this function down by double-clicking on the bottom right corner, we get these values for all the salespersons. And as you can see, there are some persons who have huge inconsistencies and some that perform far more consistent. If you work with Microsoft Excel, you don't necessarily only work with numbers, but also with text. And when you work with text, you often have problems with incorrect data. A common issue are misplaced spacings. Let's assume the person who created these data did some huge spacing mistakes in the state column. So just like here, Florida has way too much spacings, and between New and York there are way too much spacings, and here at the beginning and in the middle. And now we need an easy way to fix that automatically, and the solution to that is a trim function. So let's recreate this same exact column by using the trim function. So we're going to type in equals trim, and then we just have to reference the respective cell with the text in it. And as you can see, all the wrong spacings have been removed. And if we draw that down for all the other rows, we see even the huge spacing mistakes for New York have been removed automatically. So yeah, it's a really useful function to clean your text data. Now that we have clean text data, I want to show you a function that allows you to combine multiple text cells. I want to create a new column that has the whole location in it, so city and state combined together, separated by a comma and a space. So for that purpose, we can use the concatenate function. Let's type in equals concat, and there it already is, concatenate. And now we can put in all the text cells that we want to combine. So let's start with the city, and then we put in a comma and a space as a second argument, and as the third argument we put in the state. Not that column, but the clean column, of course, Texas, there we go, and now we have also Texas in there. Now we can draw that down, and now this gives us city plus state in one cell for every single row. The next function I want to show you is the count function. This function can be used for several purposes, but in our case we can use it to make sure that we have no missing values in any of our rows. So you got to know the count function only counts numeric values. So we're gonna put the whole range for each row in it, which contains text cells and numeric cells, and it will only count the numeric cells. Should be a 4 because we have 4 numeric cells in this row, in every row basically. So we can draw this down, and as you can see, every row has 4 values, and if we delete one value right here, you see this goes down to 3. And this is really useful because in this way we can automatically see which row has some issues and don't have to go through all the cells in the data. It's not always the case that you only want to count the numeric values. So if you want to count all the non-empty cells and you don't care if it's text data or numeric values or whatever, you have to use the count A function. So let's type it in, count A, and do the same. I guess A stands for all in that case. And it should be a 7 here. Yes, as you can see, 7 values in this row. If we draw it down, and now we can test it. So we're going to delete a text value. Let's delete this text cell. And as you can see, the non-empty counter goes down by 1 while the numeric stays the same because it only counts numeric values. The last two functions I'm going to show you are not necessarily meant to be used on a row-wise level. They are used for analysis that cuts straight through the data and gives you some actual insights on an aggregated level. So for our data set, we want to count the number of salespeople that work in every state. So let's just copy that header down here. The first one will be the state, and the second one will be the number of sellers. So let's list all the states that we have in this data set. First one is Texas, then we have Florida, we have California, and last but not least, New York. Yes. So let's insert this countIf function. As you can see, this function takes 2 arguments. The first one is the range of values that we want to check, and there we're gonna use the trimmed states column because these are the clean values. And the second argument is the condition, or in that case it's called criteria. So we put in there Texas because we want to count all the cells that equal Texas. And we can make a cell reference. And to make sure that the range is not changed, if we copy that somewhere else or draw it down with the autocomplete function, we have to use these dollar signs. Let's use some dollar signs in front of the 4 and the 23. These are the rows. Okay, and as you can see, it puts out 6, which says 6 people working in Texas. And that's correct if we count it manually. Now we can just draw it down, and it calculates all these values for every state. So we have 4 people, for example, working in New York. Instead of just incrementing a counter every time a cell in a given range fulfills a condition, we can also sum up values every time a cell fulfills a condition by using the SUMIF function. Now, instead of counting the number of salespeople per state, we want to sum up the total revenue per state. So let's copy that title and call it sales revenue. Now we're going to use the SUMIF function. And the first argument is range again. So we're going to choose our trimmed state column because this is our search range again. Gonna fix that range. And as a criteria, we choose this cell with a state in it, just like before. As you can see, the last argument, which is the sum range, has some square brackets around it. That means this value is not necessarily required because sometimes the search range is the sum range at the same time. That's the case if you want to sum up the values of your search range if they meet a certain criteria. In our case, however, we have to define that value because our sum range is the total revenue column. Now that we have selected our sum range, let's just insert these dollar signs in order to fix that range as before. And press the enter button, and there we have our result. Now we have the sales revenue per state. And this is a really good example of how to perform some quick yet powerful analysis in Microsoft Excel. That's it for now about the top 10 must-know Excel functions for beginners. I hope you enjoyed this Excel guide video, and if you want to see more of this content, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to like, comment and share this video. I really appreciate it. As always, see you next time.